Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me again for another edition of Electric Avenue's YouTube updates. Uh, Let me start just by saying thank you for all the well wishes that I got last week for talking about some personal stuff. Um, we lost a very close member of the family last week, and I didn't go into too much detail here, but those of you who know us know how much this meant to us. So thank you again for all the kind and well-wishing words that you sent our way. Let me get started on this week's new releases. We're up to July 14th, 2023. It's not a massive week, but there's stuff. And there's probably more than what we would have had in typical July a couple years ago, even. So, yeah, everything sort of has shifted, I think, and it's now sort of kind of, I don't know, based around the times of year when people can get out and tour. It was kind of difficult when people were getting sick in the winter. They weren't really releasing as much because they couldn't tour. Now they're touring a little more. We'll see what this year holds. Anyway, so let me get started here with the sort of big release of the week, which is an old jazz album. John Coltrane with Eric Dolphy. It's Evenings at the Village Gate. This is a 2-record set with looks like 5 long tracks here. My favorite things is almost 16 minutes. When the Lights Are Low, 15 minutes. Impressions, 10 minutes. Green Sleeves, 16 minutes. And Africa, 22 minutes. So a 22-minute track at the end. These tapes apparently were discovered recently, and after 60 years or so, and they decided to put them out, which is great. It's amazing how they keep discovering this stuff, and as one friend quipped, I guess that means the complete Village Gate sessions weren't complete, and now they are, so yeah. Interesting. So let's see, there's a bunch of other jazz things coming out this week. Jazz Dispensary does great work and in remastering stuff. This is Idris Muhammad, and it is Black Rhythm Revolution. Obviously he's a drummer. Says featuring an all-star lineup of musicians including Melvin Sparks, Virgil Jones, Clarence Thomas, and more. Well, it is not that Clarence Thomas, I can tell you. I would be surprised. All analog mastering from the original tapes by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio. So it's in these nice sort of thicker, they call them tip-on jackets, I suppose. And so it's a thicker cardboard. And Kevin Gray, who does all of the Blue Note reissues. So you know it's going to sound good. All right, another one in that series. Leon Spencer's Where I'm Coming From. This is supposedly a real groovy, funky, it's got a lot of organ kind of sounding stuff on it. Engineered by the legendary Rudy Van Gelder, featuring a lineup of virtuosos, including Idris Muhammad, Buddy Caldwell, Melvin Sparks, and more. All analog mastering. Pressed 180 gram vinyl at RTI. This one as well. So RTI pressed these, so then you know they're gonna sound good because RTI does amazing stuff. And yeah, so the third one, there's 3 of them actually. Jazz Dispensary, Jack DeJohnette. This is Sorcery. Jack is known for playing drums on Bitches Brew, Miles Davis. A psych jazz powerhouse, first wide pressing since its original release in 1974. All analog mastering from the original tapes by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio, pressed on 180 gram vinyl at RTI. So, all right, you get those things. Then, coming from the other side of the jazz realm, we get Verve by Request series, and here we have Pharoah Sanders' Black Unity, and this is pressed at Third Man in Detroit, Michigan. 180 gram audiophile quality vinyl. Not as certain who is doing the mastering on these, but Third Man does great work. This is in conjunction with Verve and Universal. Yeah, and this is supposed to be also a true funk jazz masterpiece. Pharoah Sanders, Norman Connors, Stanley Clarke, some big names here. So it's a fairly large combo too. There's like 9 people listed. So if you like your jazz funk mid 70s style, and see if I can get this right. Yusuf Lateef, and it's Psychic Emotus. And this is the other one that came out this week, Verve by Request. Also pressed at Third Man. I had an original of this a little while back. But it's cool to get these nice reissues. Bob Thiele did the production, and it features the first Gymnopedy, so I'm assuming that's probably Eric Satie based. Yusuf is a little out there, but I don't know. Good stuff. And Miles Davis gets a Music on Vinyl reissue this week for this. Well, this is Sorcerer. It wasn't the. I think it was the Jack T. Jeanette was called Sorcery. Sorcery. So a lot of sorcerers floating around this week. So Miles, limited edition of 2,500 numbered copies on translucent green vinyl, features Ron Carter, Herbie Hancock, Tony Williams, and Wayne Shorter. Yeah. The first title is called Prince of Darkness. All right. Oh, there's a lot of sorcery and stuff going on in the late 60s, early 70s. You think of that whole Exorcist era and whatever. And another jazz reissue, Largo by Brad Mehldau. I don't think this was on vinyl before. First time on LP. Originally released in 2002. Produced by John Bryan, famous for producing Fiona Apple, Amy Mann, former member of the Grays, right? So anyway, it's pretty cool. Brad's an incredible jazz musician, pianist, and that's a great early record of his. All right. So some big name, I guess, Nepo babies. I don't know what you call them, right? Dwayne Betts, from the Allman Betts band, but son of Dickie Betts, and this is his new solo record, Wild and Precious Life, debut album. He's been in a lot of bands, so it's really interesting that he's finally going solo. Featuring special guests Derek Trucks, Marcus King, and Nikki Bloom. Beautiful cover. I like this cover a lot. Probably indicative, sort of the kind of music featured within. But so there you get that. Another Nepo baby. Lucas Nelson and Promise of the Real. It's funny, they almost look about the same too. These guys with the wide-brimmed hats and the long hair, right? Beards. I love how they write this out. Lucas Nelson and POTR. Promise of the Real is too big. It almost looks like they tried to make this look like one of those Essential collection covers that Columbia does so much of. This is on 30 Tigers. Nice picture of the band back there. If you don't know, Lucas is Willie Nelson's son. So includes the hit single More Than Friends featuring Lainey Wilson. So brand new record from them. It's been a little while, a couple years. And one more sort of country Americana in this realm, Culture Wall. His new album, Little Songs. And this is a indie record store exclusive on blue vinyl. I guess I wasn't checking to see what the other ones were. Sort of has that old time feel to it. This is sort of like the thing that's going on now is that in country music, we're trying to find what was real country and sort of get back to sort of basics after country sort of went through a whole pop reinvention. Um, like, we're looking for the real stuff. So, anyway. Okay, some reissues. This is kind of a big deal. Rammstein, Sehnsucht. I don't know, my German's all right. 1997 album, so 25th, gosh, 26th anniversary. That's crazy. Limited heavyweight black vinyl, remastered, includes Spiel mit mir, Play with Me, 2023 mix, and unreleased photographs. It's almost like a sort of a little mini box set here. You get to see the whole store in mirror quality, right? It's pretty cool the way they sort of spelled out Sehnsucht on the cover like that. And it says anniversary edition. Well, if that mirror wasn't enough, do you see a theme here? This is Charlie XCX Pop 2. And the cover says really nothing on it. But Pop 2 was Charlie's sort of, I think it's on purple vinyl, made in Germany. It was kind of, she was sort of going through a reinvention at this point. You say, like, how deep are we going here? I mean, it was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Not more than 5 or 6. But she basically was going more sort of like the kind of glitchy modern pop at this point. And there's a whole bunch of collaborators on here. 10 tracks. If you like Charlie, it's one of her best releases. I would say seek that out. She's sort of gone back a little bit into the pop mainstream because some of that stuff, while it was very like critically acclaimed and her fans loved it, it was maybe in some ways a step too far for like pop radio. So, but she was really like pushing the boundaries of what was pop there. And like I said, tons of features. So I think Carly Rae Jepsen is on that one. I'm not sure. She released 2 EPs at kind of about the same time and then put them out on vinyl previously as one release, and that is out of print and is selling for almost $300 online. So this is probably a good thing that they're at least putting out half of it. Maybe the other half will come later and it'll be like almost like a little set there. Another reissue, Deftones self-titled album, 20th anniversary, limited edition on translucent ruby vinyl. I was kind of sad when a couple of these came in and they were all smashed up, so I'm going to try and get some more. But anyway, sometimes you can't help the way that things get packed. So Wiz Khalifa, and I think this is a new record as far as I know, Multiverse. I think maybe it started streaming earlier this summer, it seems like, but there you get the track list. The first track actually features Girl Talk, which is pretty cool, like sort of turntablist kind of sampling artist. So I know some people who are very excited about this, the new Blake Mills album. It's been a long time now, it seems like. A couple years anyway. Jelly Road. There's a picture of Blake there. Blake is producer mainly, singer songwriter. Did a bunch of stuff with like Perfume Genius, but gets name checked a lot as a very very talented and sort of detailed artist. I can't remember if he did stuff with Feist or not. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, he's done a lot of stuff for a lot of people. You see Blake Mills' name around a lot. Let's see, Mark Ribot. This is his new album, Connection Ceramic Dog. That's as far as I can tell from the title. Yeah. Anyway, Mark is... What can I say about Mark that hasn't been said already? Very famous guitarist, mainly Tom Waits guitarist for a long time, I believe. This album features a little bonus from Sid Straw on vocals on track 4. There's a name you haven't heard in probably 20 years. Yeah, recorded in New York. Um, Mark's just an extremely inventive guitarist, and usually sort of like kind of like retro feeling, but in a sort of dark, more twisted sort of way. Sleater Kinney. Well, this kind of looks different than the Dig Me Out album. This is Dig Me In, a Dig Me Out covers album. And this is basically the Dig Me Out album done by other people. St. Vincent, Wilco, Margot Price, Tunde from TV on the Radio, Self Esteem, Courtney Barnett, and Black Belt Eagle Scout are side 1. Side 2, Linda Linda's, Jason Isbell and Amanda Shires, Tyler Cole, Big Joni, Lowe, and Namdi. I don't know how to say that. So it's cool that Lowe is on here. I haven't heard it, but I think I need to. So anyway, Dig Me Out's a great album. It'd be interesting to hear those covers. Well, one of my favorite artists ever, she's still reissuing a lot of stuff. These are the Bernie Grundman remasters that came out as a box set a couple of years ago, I think. But Joni Mitchell, Song to a Seagull, which was, I think, the first album. Yeah, features Michael from Mountains. And then another one coming out, Clouds. You kind of need this album because Both Sides Now is the last song on it. It's got Chelsea Morning, Tin Angel. Great album. Those are both back when she was really just more known as a singer-songwriter and hadn't really broken through big time as an artist herself, but great albums. Another reissue, Aerosmith, remastered from the original source tapes. They came out with like 4 or 5 of these about a month ago, and for some reason this one was straggling, and now it's out on its own too. So, Aerosmith. A band that I love with 2 albums that one I'm sort of not so thrilled with, and the other is good. REM, Around the Sun. I know there are people out there that are going to be looking for this album, and you say to yourself, is my computer or my TV out of focus? No, that's the cover. This features Leaving New York. It's their 2004 album. I also did like the song Electron Blue. But generally speaking, this album was a bit of sort of dull in a way, just because all of the songs were kind of the same tempo, sort of downbeat. But, you know, if you're an REM fan and you're a completist, you're going to need that, because I don't know if this has been on, it's probably been on vinyl, but I've never seen it on vinyl before, and I don't think it's been reissued since back in the day. And the other one that came out this week is REM's Collapse Into Now, and this was their last studio album, and this was really pretty good. Includes the singers Uberlin, Oh My Heart, and It Happened Today, featuring guest appearances from Patti Smith, Eddie Vedder, and Peaches, a 2011 album. Other thing I was going to say about this, produced by Jackknife Lee, who'd been doing work with U2, and I mean, I guess, could I say this is the album that broke up the band finally? I mean, I guess they sort of meant it. I guess it was meant to be a farewell. They haven't really said why they chose to stop there. Maybe they just weren't feeling it much anymore. I don't know. But the albums that I'm really waiting for are Up and Reveal, and I'm not sure if Up has gotten a release date yet, but Reveal is being reissued in about a month. And I know some people who are sort of ambivalent on that record. I love that record. Love it. It's very tuneful. It's very summery. I have a certain nostalgia about that album, so I can't wait for that. Okay, another reissue. This is Adrian Lenker and Buck Meek, members of Big Thief, and this is their album that just got reissued called A Sides and B Sides, and this is sort of like kind of odds and ends, picking up 2014 EPs from both of them on maroon vinyl. Yeah, I don't know. I look at this picture and I go, it seems like we've all been there at one time or another, right? And this is reissued on, well, originally it came out on Saddle Creek. So, anyway, that's really cool. Let's see, Gym Class Heroes. This was sort of a popular album back in the day, available on vinyl. Paper Cut Chronicles, As Cruel as School Children. That's the name of the album. Features Clothes Off, The Queen and I, Viva La White Girl on lemonade colored vinyl. It's sort of pop punk stuff. Produced by Sam and Sluggo. Didn't realize that. Co-produced by Patrick Stump. All right. Let's see. Jackie Wilson. Reissue of Higher and Higher. This is on the Brunswick reissue series. And I didn't know Brunswick had a reissue series. So, mastered from the original tapes by Dennis Drake at the Music Lab in Holmdel, New Jersey. Vinyl mastering by Dave Gardner at Infrasonic in Los Angeles. So, I mean, everybody loves Your Love Keeps Lifting Me Higher and Higher, and now you can get it on an album again. Interesting. It's got a song with Van McCoy as a songwriter who would eventually do The Hustle. I know I've seen Van's name on other records, so I think he's sort of a long time music writer and producer. All right, so Kinks. I think maybe some Kinks fans already have these albums, but it's nice to have nice heavyweight vinyl versions of them. Black vinyl. This is Preservation Act Volume 1. This is sort of, I guess, when they started getting a little more like talky on their albums, and sort of almost like they were doing kind of like more thematic. They'd already sort of done that with things like Arthur and whatever, but Preservation Act 2, which is a double album. This features oh gosh, too much stuff to even mention, but it was originally released in 74. Both of them. This was May 74. They were both May 74. See, people who like lived through that era would know that better than me. I was just such a wee lad at that point. Kinks, Schoolboys in Disguise. I think I can show that one on video. 1975 album. That's a great photo. Let's see, and soap opera. There's 4 of them this week. 1975 also includes Everybody's a Star. That's sort of a sought after song, but yeah, so we have those used from time to time, from one to the other, but although I've been seeing less and less of them, I feel like people are sort of hanging on to a lot of their originals on some of these things now, just like this Rolling Stones Metamorphosis. This was some kind of collection. Looks like it's a lot of sort of like stuff from the ABKCO era. If you're a Stones fan, I know you know what that is. Let's see, Dandy Warhols. I loved this album when it came out. Not gonna lie, produced by Courtney Taylor Taylor, who is the lead singer, and Nick Rhodes of Duran Duran, and featured collaborations with Simon Le Bon, Nile Rodgers, Tony Visconti, and Evan Dando. This was like probably one of their catchiest, definitely probably most accessible albums. And it featured the single We Used to Be Friends, and also You Were the Last High. That's a great album. So, and that's on 180 gram. It doesn't look like it's color, but it's music on vinyl. Another reissue, Brian May and Friends, Starfleet Project. This is Brian May's legendary 1983 Super Sessions featuring Edward Van Halen, Alex Greitzer, REO Speedwagon, Phil Chen, and Fred Mandel. All new mixes from the original analog multi-track recordings, maximum fidelity, half-speed cut on 180 gram vinyl. The Brian May Gold Series. So if you're a Queen fan, you might be wanting to look into that. And let's see, the last two sort of new release CDs this week. George Benson, you see that, live at Montreux, 1986. It's a 3 CD set. Actually, it's 2 CDs and a DVD, sorry. And it starts with Feel Like Making Love and has On Broadway. Let's see, Greatest Love of All, Never Give Up on a Good Thing, Turn Your Love Around. A lot of great George. I don't know why that didn't come out on vinyl this week. I didn't see anything. The other one is Cher's It's a Man's World. This was kind of a less successful album for her from the 90s. It had the singles, her version of Walking in Memphis, the Mark Cohn song, and One by One, which had a bunch of dance remixes featured on here. I think there might be a bonus track or two on here. I'm not sure, but I remember the album didn't really do that well, and it wasn't that it was bad. It was just sort of nondescript. And then a couple years later, few years, Believe came out, and oh my gosh, massive success for that album. So it just wasn't Cher's biggest moment, but I think there's a vinyl version of that, and it runs about $100. So I don't have it, but if you're interested, let me know and we'll order it. One thing I wanted to show, because I haven't seen this on vinyl, I don't know if I've ever seen it, and we've been waiting years and years and years for them to do this. And then a couple years ago, they announced that these were coming out, and then they sort of took away all of the United States access to them, and now we're finally getting them. Is My Bloody Valentine's Loveless. And this is one of the greatest dream rock albums ever made. And they really only have had 3 records so far. This was 1990, and then it took 25 years or so to do the follow-up, which was MBV, and they haven't done one since. They keep talking about, yeah, we have something in the works. Yeah, we'll believe it when we see it. Anyway, Domino reissued this recently, and it doesn't say anything on the back. I think it's 1 LP with a download code. Kind of expensive, pushing almost $60, but if you really want it, you need to get it fast, because I don't know how long those are going to be around. And it's a classic. And very influential. It might not be like the biggest album that everybody knows, but it's definitely influential. All right, moving right along, let me do my mini review for the week. I was kind of like, I don't know what I'm feeling this week. And I just sort of like, oh, I don't think I've done a David Bowie record yet. I don't know why. So I decided to pick one that I love. It's not necessarily everyone's favorite. And some people just write it off because of what they remember the first time they heard it, or their concept of how they feel about it. But I love this record. David Bowie's Outside. This was released in 1994, 95. Recorded, I believe, in 94. David himself did this painting on the cover. Sort of a self-portrait. If you notice, it says number 1 Outside, and that's because this was supposed to be part of a trilogy that never came to fruition, and that's really unfortunate, because we're sort of left hanging with this idea that he presented, but then he sort of just moved on. They might have been better off just leaving the number 1 off the cover and just calling it Outside, but So this album was sort of at a transitional point in David's career where he had gone through the 80s, the super sort of pop reinvention, and then he sort of started the 90s with Black Tie White Noise with Nile Rodgers. And that album was good. It wasn't like super commercial or anything. And so then it was like, well, what to do next? Well, he decided to kind of revisit the Berlin trilogy sort of strategy. So he got together with Brian Eno, who did a lot of the mixing and synths and producing on this record, and assembled his crack band that he'd gotten by this point, focused mainly around Reeves Gabriel's fabulous guitar work, who is now a main guitarist in The Cure. And the other one that I really am blown away by on here is Mike Garson, pianist, who played with Bowie way back in the early 70s and did, if you've ever heard Aladdin Sane, or if you've not, go listen to that song on YouTube and listen to Mike Garson's piano solo, and you'll know what I'm talking about because he plays unlike almost anybody else. I put him up there with like people like Rick Wakeman and Steve Naive, Elvis Costello's pianist, as some of the greatest rock pianists we've ever had. And he kind of takes almost like a avant-garde jazzy approach to his way that he fills out the sound on this album. But basically, this album was supposed to be a trilogy about it was a concept. Bowie was interested in like modern true crime dramas that were sort of around at the time. Twin Peaks and David Lynch were a big influence. And so he decided to tell the story of a 14-year-old girl who'd been murdered, and he was playing the sort of private investigator role on it, as well as the roles of all of the characters along the way, whether they were the victims or the children, the murderer, or people who were like somehow involved in the story. And so his voice features throughout the album in segues where he kind of does spoken word in like, I would be like early auto tune, sort of like this vocoder manipulation of the vocals to sound like a twisted old man or old lady, or like, or child or something. Very interesting. But anyway, the songs themselves, it was the mid 90s, so I suppose grunge was a big thing. It didn't really seep into this album so much as the Nine Inch Nails influence. This was sort of the beginning of his kind of paying homage to Trent Reznor, and then that came even more fully on the following album, Earthling. But Heart's Filthy Lesson was the first single, and I really love that song. Some people are like, it's okay, but it has a definite Nine Inch Nails vibe to it without being super aggressive or super like, it's not like you threw a bunch of expletives or something in there, but it's just kind of a great sort of groovy song. But the album sort of is all over the place. I mean, you get something that's sort of kind of more pumping and aggressive, like Hello Space Boy, which then later was remixed by Pet Shop Boys and appeared in the song with him as vocalist. Neil Tennant did, and that was actually more of a kind of a charting song in the UK anyway. There are no really big hits on here, though. The last song, Strangers When We Meet, is a great kind of melodic song that sort of feels a little bit tacked on. And I think that I read somewhere that they were actually looking for kind of a more pop song to be able to put on here to help sell the record. So Bowie was sort of like, well, there's this great song, why don't we just sort of put that on the end? So it's as sort of even tacked on. I really think it sort of brings the album to a good close and kind of sort of more uplifting. But we never do get a resolution to this whole story of whatever this murder is and everything. The Motel is probably my favorite song in the middle of the album. It's very sort of atmospheric. The piano solos are incredible. The next track, called I've Not Been to Oxford Town. Oxford Town apparently was a New Jersey location, fictional, that he'd chosen for this. Other songs I think of note, We Prick You is pretty like kind of weirdly catchy in a way. I'm Deranged is like the song that got featured in David Lynch's Lost Highway film a lot, and that's a great song. It's kind of dark, and he sort of uses the word deranged throughout the album a little bit here and there. But the title track is sort of just kind of like setting the scene. I feel like if you like Black Star, and so many people do, they really should go back and delve into this album a little bit. And I'm not saying like you have to like it, but give it a listen. And you actually should probably give it like 2 or 3 listens, because it really does not settle on the first listen, I don't think. But the artwork is very sort of evocative and strange. And but it did set the tone for Bowie from there on out in his career, as far as being a little bit more experimental, avant-garde in some sense. Not so wildly, but within the rock framework. A little more of a return to what he did in kind of the 70s. The segues are a little strange. I know they'll probably like, at first, like, this is so weird. It might help to read the lyrics as you're listening to it, because I think a lot gets lost in the lyrics if you're not listening. And I did see him on that tour. Many of my customers have told me they saw him on that tour. He was out on the road with Nine Inch Nails, and in the show I saw in Philadelphia, Nine Inch Nails came out and played their set, and it was wild, and there was mud being flung because it was raining, and so anyone in the grassy area was getting mud hurled at them. And Bowie came out and played saxophone, backing Trent up on a song or two, and then it sort of switched kind of seamlessly into Bowie's band, and then he started playing his set, and at some point Trent came out and played saxophone with Bowie, because they both were kids that played saxophone at some point. So that was kind of interesting too. And I will say also, it's interesting because Bowie basically played most of Outside as his show that night, and I think he did play a couple of songs that were hits as encore songs, but he really didn't play anything other than that album. And I can't say it went over completely successfully, because I think a lot of people were sort of like, we don't know any of this material. It was before the days of the internet, before the days of, any kind of YouTube or whatever. People hadn't heard these songs at all. They'd never been escaping the studio or like a vinyl record or a CD. So that's kind of hard to like put yourself in the time of like, we've never heard any of this. Like, it would be one thing if it was just a couple of songs here or there, but it was like the entire show pretty much. Very bold thing to do. Bowie was one of the few people that could get away with it. He did do a very good job of sort of, it was almost like Thin White Duke staging, where it was lots of white light and sort of him just sort of in white. But I don't know. It was a demanding thing to do that with your audience, and the performance sort of sold it. So, but again, it was not a major commercial success. He really never had a commercial success like Let's Dance ever again. So, but at that point, I don't think it really meant that much to him, because he developed such a career and a catalog, and even from that point on. So anyway, I recommend Bowie's Outside, number 1, Outside. Nathan, I can't remember the name of the character, but yeah, Private Investigator Diaries. So I think he did actually write some kind of diary about either that album or the story for Q Magazine back in the day. So go look that up if you can find it. Sparks. Got Sparks album finally back in stock too. So it'd been out for almost 2 months. I think they were selling them all on the tour at the shows. So it's good to see that. And there might be some other things sneaking in here that I haven't seen in a while. You can see I still have a couple Melancholy left, which is very shocking. So shocking that I even have them. I hadn't seen this in like 5 years. And we've sold quite a few. We've been very lucky to get as many as we have. So anyway, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I know this video is a little bit longer again. Take care, and next week will be a bigger week. I think that next week is Greta Van Fleet, Blur. What else we got? The Barbie soundtrack. Well, we'll get to it. All right. Peace. Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend. Be well. Thanks.